When you hear the phrase, a woman with no friends, what image comes to your mind? Perhaps you imagine someone who is bitter, unkind, or maybe someone who simply doesn't know how to connect with others. But let me tell you, behind that phrase often lies a deeper, quieter struggle, one that isn't easy to see and rarely spoken about. A woman with no friends is not necessarily a woman who doesn't want them. More often, she is someone who has lived through storms that the world cannot imagine. She has carried responsibilities that left no time for companionship, or she has given her heart to the wrong people until it broke so many times that she stopped opening the door to anyone else. There is a silence in her life that is not empty but heavy. It is filled with questions like, am I not enough? Or, why do I feel invisible? And the truth is, these are questions many women quietly wrestle with, though they may smile in public and show the world a face that seems confident and unbothered. Deep down, the silence can be deafening. Loneliness isn't about being physically alone. It's about being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. That is the silent struggle of the woman with no friends. Now, society often has a way of painting this woman as flawed. If she doesn't have a circle of friends to laugh with at brunch or a tribe to post selfies with, people begin to wonder what's wrong with her. They assume she must be difficult or untrustworthy or simply unlikable. And when those whispers turn into judgments, it becomes harder and harder for her to step forward and say, I feel lonely. Because loneliness in this world is treated like a shameful confession, not a human experience. What we often fail to recognize is that many women find themselves friendless not by choice, but by circumstance. Some have poured their energy into raising children or caring for aging parents, giving every ounce of themselves until there is nothing left to invest in friendships. Others have moved to new cities or countries where they are outsiders, trying to build lives from scratch while battling the feeling that no one truly understands them. And some have been hurt so many times, betrayed, abandoned, dismissed, that their hearts have learned to stay guarded because trust no longer feels safe. But beyond the reasons, beyond the circumstances, there is a shared truth the woman with no friends carries a quiet resilience. Every day, she wakes up and faces a world that measures worth by social circles and applause. She navigates workplaces where cliques are formed, communities where inclusion feels conditional, and online spaces where friendships are displayed like trophies. And yet, she continues on. She keeps showing up, even if no one is there to hold her hand. She keeps surviving, even when no one notices her struggle. That in itself is a testament to strength. Even if it is born from pain, I want you to imagine her for a moment. Imagine her at the end of a long day, coming home to a quiet room where no one is waiting to ask, how was your day? Imagine her scrolling through her phone, not because she wants to, but because she's searching for a sense of belonging in a digital world that moves too fast to care. Imagine her trying to celebrate a small victory, finishing a project, cooking a new recipe, getting through a tough week, and realizing there is no one to share it with. That moment, that emptiness, is what we often overlook. But here's something else I want you to imagine. Imagine the strength it takes to keep going anyway, to still dream, to still show kindness to strangers, to still hope that one day she will find the kind of connection that feels real and lasting. That kind of endurance, that kind of quiet bravery, is often invisible to the world, but it is powerful beyond measure. So when we think of a woman with no friends, let us not see someone broken or lacking. Let us see someone who has endured the silence of empty rooms and the weight of unspoken struggles. Let us recognize her not for what she doesn't have, but for the strength she shows every day, simply by continuing to live, to try, and to hope. Because sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence, and the strongest warriors are the ones we never see. From the time a girl is little, she is often told that she will grow up to be surrounded by friends, that her laughter will echo in circles of companionship, and that being loved and included will be as natural as breathing. The world feeds her this picture of constant togetherness, sleepovers, best friends, loyal companions who walk with her through every season of life. And for some, it happens. But for many others, that picture fades into something far less colorful and far more lonely. Society has an expectation, almost an unspoken rule, that a woman should always be connected, always social, always wrapped in the warmth of friendships. She should be the one sending messages in group chats, planning weekend outings, or standing in pictures with her arms linked to others. And when she is not, when she is alone, society doesn't ask why. Instead, It begins to ask what's wrong with her. This is the weight of expectation that so many women carry. Because in a world that celebrates extroversion and connection, a woman without friends is often seen as incomplete, as though her story is missing a vital piece. She can be intelligent, kind, hardworking, even accomplished. But if she walks into a room alone, people begin to notice not what she has achieved, but what she lacks. They notice the absence beside her more than the strength within her. And it doesn't end there. The culture we live in has only magnified these pressures. Social media, for example, thrives on showing groups of friends taking trips together, laughing over dinners, celebrating milestones, as though life is a constant parade of togetherness. Scroll through any feed, and you'll see the same message: being worthy means being surrounded. That constant reminder makes solitude look like failure, even when it isn't. It paints the woman without friends as invisible in a world that rewards visibility. But the reality is far more complex than the expectation. Not every woman finds her tribe easily. Some try and fail, not because they are unworthy of love, but because they are surrounded by people who misunderstand them. Others pour so much of themselves into caring for their families, building their careers, or surviving their hardships, that they are left with little time or energy to cultivate friendships. And many carry wounds from past betrayals that make trusting again feel like walking barefoot on glass. When society's image of what a woman should look like collides with the reality of what her life actually is, the result is shame. Shame because she is not meeting the picture-perfect standard. Shame because she is not the smiling, surrounded figure that the world applauds. And shame has a cruel way of silencing voices. It convinces her that she should keep her loneliness hidden, because to admit it would only confirm the world's suspicions that something is wrong with her. But what if the world has it backward? What if true strength is not in being constantly surrounded, but in learning how to stand strong when no one is by your side? What if the reality of a woman with no friends is not a story of failure, but a story of resilience against expectations that were never fair to begin with? The truth is, friendships do not define worth. A woman's value is not measured by how many names she has saved in her phone or how many people show up for her birthday dinner. Her worth is in her heart, her resilience, her ability to wake up and face each day even when she feels unseen. Yet society continues to ignore this truth, preferring instead the easy narrative that something must be missing from her. This gap between expectation and reality is where the pain lies. Because when you are constantly told who you should be, it becomes harder to embrace who you are. And the woman with no friends is often left balancing these two worlds, the expectation that she should be surrounded and the reality that she is not, while carrying the heavy silence in between. I stand here to say that the silence is not weakness. It is not failure. It is simply reality, and reality deserves to be acknowledged without shame, without judgment, without the burden of society's false image pressing down on her. Because no woman should be defined by the friends she has, but by the strength she carries when she walks alone. Loneliness is not just the absence of people around you. It is the absence of connection, of being understood, of having someone you can trust with the fragile parts of your heart. For a woman with no friends, this isolation is not simply quiet. It is heavy, it is consuming, and it seeps into places most people never notice. It shapes the way she sees herself, the way she moves through the world, and the way she dares, or doesn't dare, to hope. At first, the silence may feel like a choice, almost like self-protection. She tells herself she is fine, that she doesn't need anyone, that solitude is easier than disappointment. But as days turn into weeks, and weeks into years, the silence begins to whisper lies. It tells her she is not lovable. It tells her she is not interesting enough, not worthy enough, not good enough to be chosen. Those whispers are cruel, and over time, they carve wounds that are invisible but deep. The emotional impact of isolation often hides itself behind a strong face. A woman may smile at work, exchange pleasantries with neighbors, nod politely in conversations, and still feel like a ghost. It is not the absence of people that hurts the most. It is the absence of intimacy, the absence of someone who sees beyond the surface. She can be in a crowded room and still feel like she's drowning in her own invisibility. This kind of loneliness has a way of planting seeds of self-doubt. She begins to question her value. She replays conversations in her mind, wondering if she said something wrong, if she is too quiet, too different, too much of something or not enough of something else. It is exhausting carrying that question mark everywhere she goes. And the worst part is that she feels she cannot admit it because admitting loneliness feels like confessing failure. But loneliness doesn't just affect the mind. It affects the heart. It brings with it an ache that cannot be measured. There are days when the emptiness feels like a hollow echo inside her chest, and nights when the silence is so loud it keeps her awake. It is in those quiet hours that the longing for companionship becomes overwhelming, a longing not for a crowd, but for just one person who cares enough to ask, "How are you really doing?" This emotional weight can sometimes spiral into darker places. It can lead to sadness so deep it feels like quicksand, to anxiety that lingers in every social interaction, to a sense of despair that whispers there is no way out. For some women, it becomes depression, a shadow that follows them relentlessly, convincing them that things will never change. And yet, they carry on often unnoticed because society teaches them to mask their pain, to appear strong even when they are breaking inside. And yet, amid this struggle, there is a strange paradox: isolation, though painful, also teaches her things about herself that others might never discover. It forces her to listen to her own voice when there is no one else to drown it out. It challenges her to find strength in solitude, to create joy in small victories, to hold herself together when no one else is there to do it. That is why the emotional impact of isolation is complex. It is both a wound and a teacher. Still, the reality remains: loneliness leaves scars. It changes the way she trusts, the way she opens up, the way she views the world. And those scars, while invisible, shape her deeply. They remind her of the countless times she wished she had someone to call, someone to share her joy or her tears, and realize she had no one. When you see her walking alone, sitting quietly, or seeming withdrawn, remember that what you cannot see is the storm inside her. Remember that she may look composed, but inside she could be carrying the weight of isolation that has chipped away at her confidence and tested her spirit. And understand that this weight is not weakness. It is the cost of enduring life without the safety net of friendship. Because loneliness is not just about being alone. It is about feeling unseen in a world that is always watching. When we talk about a woman with no friends, it is easy to dwell only on the pain, the absence, the longing for connection. But solitude, while often difficult, also carries within it a hidden strength. A woman who walks through life without the safety net of companionship learns something that many people never have till she learns how to stand on her own 2 feet. She learns how to navigate challenges without someone to lean on, how to comfort herself in moments of despair, and how to create meaning from within rather than waiting for it to be handed to her from the outside. At first, this independence doesn't feel like strength. It feels like survival. She wakes up and takes care of her responsibilities, not because she feels invincible, but because there is no one else to do it for her. She pushes through heartbreak, through disappointment, through loneliness, because life gives her no choice. And over time, what begins as survival becomes resilience. It becomes the ability to face the world with a quiet power that others cannot always see, but is undeniably there. Think about it: when you have no one to call at midnight, you learn to soothe your own fears. When you have no one to celebrate your achievements with, you learn to validate your own victories. When you have no one to lean on during hard times, you discover the strength that has been inside you all along. That kind of independence cannot be taught. It is forged in the fires of solitude. And with that independence often comes self-discovery. A woman with no friends learns who she is outside of other people's expectations. She does not live through the mirror of validation or the echo of approval. She has time to sit with her thoughts, to reflect, to understand her values, her dreams, and her boundaries. While society may pity her loneliness, what they fail to see is that she is also cultivating a deeper understanding of herself, an understanding that many people, distracted by constant noise and company, may never find. Of course, this does not mean the journey is easy. Strength born from solitude often feels like lifting weights heavier than you ever imagined. But with every burden carried alone, with every tear wiped away without a comforting hand, with every obstacle faced without a cheering section, her muscles of resilience grow, and one day she realizes that what once felt unbearable is now the very thing that has made her unshakable. This independence also grants her freedom. She is not bound by the need to fit into circles or to compromise her values to be accepted. She does not mold herself to keep friends who do not truly understand her. Instead, she learns to walk her own path, guided by her own compass. And while that path may feel lonely at times, it is also authentic. She is not pretending to be someone she is not. She is not bending herself into shapes just to be included. She is herself, fully unapologetically and bravely. And here lies the paradox: the woman with no friends, who is often dismissed as weak or broken, is often one of the strongest among us, because she has faced life's hardest truths without anyone to soften the blow. She has built a foundation that does not crumble when others walk away, because it was never built on others in the first place. Her independence is not a sign of what she lacks, but of what she has built within. It is important to recognize that solitude does not strip her of the desire for connection. She still longs for meaningful relationships, for someone to share her journey with. But even in the absence of that, she continues to rise. She continues to live with purpose, to dream, to push forward. And in doing so, she proves something extraordinary: that a woman does not need a crowd around her to be whole. She can be whole within herself. So, while loneliness may have left scars, it has also given her gifts. It has given her strength that cannot be taken away, independence that cannot be shaken, and resilience that cannot be denied. Because sometimes the woman who stands alone is the woman who stands the tallest. If there is one thing we desperately need to remember when we talk about women who have no friends, it is compassion. Too often, the world looks at them with suspicion, judgment, or even pity, when what they need most is kindness. A woman without friends does not need to be labeled, criticized, or reduced to whispers behind her back. She needs to be seen with understanding, with the recognition that her journey may be heavier than it looks, and that her heart carries stories no one else has bothered to listen to. It is easy to judge from the outside. People say things like, "If she has no friends, she must be difficult," or "she's probably antisocial." Some assume she is bitter or cold or simply uninterested in people. These assumptions may feel harmless, but they create barriers that keep her even more isolated. Because behind those assumptions, there might be a woman who gave her all in friendships and was betrayed. There might be a woman who moved through seasons of loss that pulled her away from people. There might be a woman who still longs for companionship, but has been too hurt, too exhausted, or too cautious to try again. Without compassion, we never get to see that truth. Compassion asks us to look deeper, to pause before we judge, to imagine what her story might really be. It asks us to stop measuring her by the size of her circle and start valuing her by the depth of her humanity. It asks us to extend warmth, not because we feel sorry for her, but because every human being deserves to feel like they belong somewhere to someone, even if just for a moment. And sometimes compassion does not take much. It could be as simple as inviting her into a conversation, even if she seems reserved. It could be asking her how she is doing and truly waiting for the answer. It could be celebrating her accomplishments when no one else notices. Compassion is not about fixing her or filling the void of all the friendships she does not have. It is about recognizing her humanity and offering respect and kindness where the world has offered only silence. When we show compassion to a woman with no friends, we are not giving her charity. We are acknowledging her dignity. We are saying, "I see you. You matter." And that simple acknowledgement can be a lifeline in a world where invisibility is one of her greatest burdens. Because being unseen is one of the harshest forms of loneliness, and compassion is the bridge that can pull her back into the light of connection. But compassion also requires us to check our own hearts. It means asking ourselves, do we measure people by how popular they are or by the content of their character? Do we overlook quiet women because they do not come with a crowd? Do we assume solitude equals failure? If we are honest, many of us have done these things without even realizing it. And that is why compassion is not just something we give. It is something we practice. It is a way of shifting our perspective so we see value where others overlook it. Imagine the difference it would make if instead of labeling her as friendless, we began to see her as courageous. Imagine if instead of excluding her because she stands alone, we included her simply because we can. Imagine if instead of pitying her, we respected her journey. That kind of compassion doesn't just change her life, it changes ours. Because when we practice compassion, we expand our own hearts. We learn to see the world not through the lens of judgment, but through the lens of humanity. A woman with no friends does not need our pity. She needs our kindness. She needs us to understand that friendship is not always easy to come by, that isolation is not always chosen, and that resilience often comes wrapped in silence. She needs us to treat her not as a problem to be solved, but as a human being worthy of love, respect, and belonging. Because in the end, compassion costs us so little, but for her, it can mean everything. When we think of the journey of a woman with no friends, it can be tempting to end the story with sadness, with emptiness, with loneliness that feels unending. But the truth is, that is not where her story has to stop. Isolation may be a chapter, but it is not the whole book. The beauty of life is that it is always offering us new chances to begin again, to open new doors, to step into new seasons where connection is still possible. A woman who has walked through years of solitude may believe it is too late for her, that friendship is something reserved for the young or for those who fit into the mold society celebrates. But that belief is a lie. Connection has no expiration date. Friendship has no age limit. At any stage of life, no matter how long the silence has lasted, a hand extended in sincerity can change everything. And that hope is not just for her. It is for all of us. Because at the heart of it, what every human being longs for is the same: to be seen, to be understood, to be valued. And sometimes the most healing friendships are not the ones formed in childhood or youth, but the ones discovered later in life, after we have lived, after we have endured, after we have learned what truly matters. Those friendships born out of honesty and maturity often run deeper and last longer than anything that came before. But before she can open her heart to others, she must first embrace herself. Self-love is not just a phrase to be repeated like a mantra. It is a practice, a choice, a daily commitment to honor her own worth. When she learns to sit with herself without judgment, when she learns to celebrate her own victories, even if no one else does, when she learns to look in the mirror and say, "I am enough," then connection with others becomes less about filling a void and more about sharing her wholeness. That is the shift we must all understand. True connection is born not out of desperation, but out of authenticity. A woman who knows her own value will not settle for shallow companionship or one-sided relationships. She will seek bonds that are real, that are nurturing, that are built on trust and respect. And when she finds them, they will not just ease her loneliness. They will add to the strength and independence she has already built within herself. And for those around her, the call is simple. Do not let her walk past you unseen. Do not assume that her quietness means she does not care. Do not mistake her solitude for pride or disinterest. Extend a hand, open a door, start a conversation. Small acts of kindness can ripple into something far greater. You never know when a simple gesture might be the beginning of a friendship that changes everything. Life is too short to let people go unnoticed. The woman with no friends might be sitting beside you in a classroom, standing behind you in a grocery store line, or walking into the same office you enter every morning. You may never know the storms she has endured, the battles she has fought, or the nights she has cried alone. But what you can do is choose to be the one who does not add to her invisibility. You can choose to be the one who sees her. And to the woman herself, the message is this: your story is not over. Loneliness may have been your companion for a time, but it does not have to be forever. You are worthy of love, of belonging, of friendships that honor who you are. Do not let the world convince you otherwise. Do not let your past wounds tell you there is no hope. Connection can find you, and when it does, it will be worth every tear you have shed and every silent night you have endured. Because no matter how long you have walked alone, there is always a road back to connection, and there is always hope for love to meet you along the way.